Remember when Hollywood's leading ladies had actual personalities and not just TikTok dance moves? The 80s and 90s gave us some of the most stunning actresses in film history, and today we're checking in to see who's still turning heads and who's completely off the radar. Brooke Shields. By the time Brooke Shields turned 16, she was already one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood. The Blue Lagoon, 1980, turned her into a global sensation, but her career started even earlier. At just 12, she starred in Pretty Baby, 1978, a film that stirred controversy but also proved she was more than just a model. The role, where she played a child raised in a brothel, was shocking at the time, but critics took notice of her acting abilities. Outside of film, Brooke dominated the modeling world. Her face was everywhere: Vogue covers, magazine spreads, and billboards. But it was her 1980 Calvin Klein ad that cemented her pop culture status. "You want to know what comes between me and my Calvins? Nothing," she purred in the now infamous commercial. The line was provocative, but it worked. Calvin Klein jeans flew off the shelves and Brooke became a household name. With fame came pressure. Hollywood had a habit of chewing up young stars, and Brooke was no exception. Despite her massive popularity, transitioning into adult roles wasn't easy. Brenda Starr, 1989, flopped, and her film career stalled. While she appeared in movies like Endless Love, 1981, and Sahara, 1983, none had the same impact as The Blue Lagoon. By the early 90s, she had faded from Hollywood's A-list. Then came television. In 1996, she landed the lead role in Suddenly Susan, a sitcom that gave her a second chance. The show ran for 4 seasons and proved she had comedic chops. Around the same time, she took on Broadway, starring in Cabaret and Chicago, showing she wasn't afraid to reinvent herself. Today, Brooke is thriving. She's guest starred on Law & Order, SVU, returned to Broadway, and even launched a podcast, Now What? At 59, she's still proving Hollywood doesn't define her. She defines herself. Michelle Pfeiffer. Michelle Pfeiffer didn't waltz into Hollywood with an instant hit. Her early roles were forgettable, and when Grease 2, 1982, arrived, it was supposed to cement her as Hollywood's next big thing. Instead, the sequel flopped hard, and Pfeiffer found herself fighting against the dreaded pretty girl with no substance label. Studios were ready to cast her as nothing more than eye candy. She had other plans. Her real breakthrough came in Scarface, 1983, where she played Elvira Hancock, the icy, disillusioned wife of Tony Montana. Acting opposite Al Pacino was no small task, but she didn't just hold her own, she stole scenes. That performance changed everything. The rest of the 80s saw her take on increasingly complex roles. The Witches of Eastwick, 1987, put her alongside Jack Nicholson, Susan Sarandon, and Cher, proving she could handle fantasy and dark humor. Tequila Sunrise, 1988, paired her with Mel Gibson and Kurt Russell, cementing her as a leading lady in action dramas. Then came Dangerous Liaisons, 1988, which earned her an Oscar nomination. But it was The Fabulous Baker Boys, 1989, that proved she wasn't just talented, she was magnetic. By the early 90s, Pfeiffer was unstoppable. Batman Returns, 1992, introduced audiences to her version of Catwoman, seductive, unpredictable, and downright electrifying. Even today, her performance remains one of the most celebrated portrayals of the character. Then came Dangerous Minds, 1995, where she played an ex-Marine turned teacher. By the end of the decade, she was among the highest-paid actresses in Hollywood, but unlike some of her peers, she knew when to step back. In the 2000s, she took a break from the spotlight, prioritizing family over fame. But Hollywood wasn't done with her. She returned with Hairspray, 2007, Mother, 2017, and Ant-Man and the Wasp, 2018. Now in her 60s, she's still working, still stunning, and still reminding Hollywood that some legends don't fade, they evolve. Cindy Crawford. By the late 1980s, Cindy Crawford wasn't just a model, she was the model. Her striking beauty, trademark mole, and undeniable presence made her the face of the supermodel era. She was everywhere: Vogue, Elle, Harper's Bazaar, gracing over 500 magazine covers. But Cindy didn't just pose. She defined an era where models had the same celebrity status as movie stars. Brands lined up to work with her: Versace, Chanel, Revlon. She was the face of them all. Then came the Pepsi commercial. The 1992 Super Bowl ad featuring Cindy in a white tank top and jean shorts sipping a soda, instant pop culture history. Cindy knew how to market herself. Hosting MTV's House of Style from 1989 to 1995 gave her a new kind of audience. Instead of just being photographed, she was talking, interviewing designers, and breaking down fashion trends. Then Hollywood came knocking. In 1995, she made the leap to acting with Fair Game, an action movie where she played a lawyer on the run. It was supposed to be her big crossover moment. Instead, it bombed. Critics slammed her acting, and Cindy quickly realized that while she could command a camera in a photo shoot, acting was a different beast. She quietly stepped away from Hollywood and refocused her energy elsewhere. Instead of fading into the background, Cindy pivoted. She built a brand, launching fitness videos, a skincare empire, Meaningful Beauty, and business ventures that kept her name in the public eye. Today, Cindy is still a fashion powerhouse. She hasn't technically retired but chooses her projects selectively. Her daughter, Kaya Gerber, has followed in her footsteps, becoming one of the most in-demand models of her generation. Cindy, now in her late 50s, remains a fixture at fashion events, proving that beauty, confidence, and influence don't have an expiration date. Demi Moore. Demi Moore's road to Hollywood success wasn't smooth. She didn't come from an industry family or have an immediate breakout role. Instead, she spent the early 80s working her way up, landing small roles in TV and B movies before getting her big break in General Hospital, 1982 to 1984. The soap opera put her on the radar, but it was St. Elmo's Fire, 1985, that made her a certified Brat Pack member, alongside Emilio Estevez, Rob Lowe, and Ali Sheedy. She didn't waste time riding the teen movie wave. Instead, she pivoted to more serious roles, and it paid off. Ghost, 1990, turned her into an international star. The film grossed over $500 million worldwide, making it one of the highest-earning movies of the decade. Hollywood took notice. Studios scrambled to sign her, leading to a string of 90s hits. A Few Good Men, 1992, had her going toe-to-toe with Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise. Indecent Proposal, 1993, sparked endless debates over its controversial plot. Disclosure, 1994, flipped the script on power dynamics, with Demi playing a high-powered executive accused of sexual harassment. Then came History. In 1996, she became the highest-paid actress in Hollywood, earning an unprecedented $12.5 million for striptease. The film, however, was a disaster. Critics tore it apart, and audiences weren't impressed. It marked the start of a rough period for Demi. G.I. Jane, 1997, was meant to be a comeback. She famously shaved her head for the role, but it flopped, and suddenly, Hollywood wasn't offering her the same big-budget scripts. Rather than forcing a career revival, she stepped back. Then came Inside Out, 2019. The memoir was brutally honest about Hollywood, addiction, relationships, and the pressures of being one of the most famous women in the world. It was a bestseller, and suddenly Demi was back in demand. Now she's still taking on new roles, proving she's not done yet. At 62, she's not just working, she's rewriting the rules for women in Hollywood. Kim Basinger. Kim Basinger wasn't just another pretty face. She had an undeniable screen presence that made Hollywood take notice. Before stepping onto a film set, she was a successful model, working with Ford models and gracing magazine covers worldwide. But standing still for a camera wasn't enough. In the late 70s, she packed her bags and headed for Hollywood, determined to prove she could act. Her early roles were a mixed bag. She got her first major TV break in Dog and Cat, 1977, a short-lived crime drama. Guest spots on Charlie's Angels and The $6 Million Man followed, but they didn't lead to instant stardom. Then came Hard Country, 1981, where she played a woman desperate to escape small-town life. That came in 1983 with Never Say Never Again. As Domino Patachi, Basinger held her own against Sean Connery's James Bond, and suddenly, Hollywood was paying attention. But it was 9.5 weeks, 1986, that changed everything. Tim Burton's Batman, 1989, took her career to new heights. Cast as photojournalist Vicky Vale, she brought glamour and intrigue to Gotham, helping the film gross over $400 million worldwide. Studios saw her as both bankable and versatile, and the 90s brought a string of leading roles. Playing Lynn Bracken, a Veronica Lake lookalike tangled in a web of corruption, Basinger delivered the best performance of her career, one that won her an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. At her peak, she was one of Hollywood's highest-paid actresses, but fame came with financial turmoil. In 2017, she returned to the big screen in 50 Shades Darker, proving she was still a force in Hollywood. These days, she takes roles on her own terms, staying out of the limelight but never out of the game. Sharon Stone. Despite working steadily through the 80s, most of Sharon Stone's roles were forgettable. She played decorative side characters in films like Irreconcilable Differences, 1984, and Alan Quatermain and the Lost City of Gold, 1986. She was a working actress, but not a star. That changed when Total Recall, 1990, came along. The sci-fi action blockbuster paired her with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and suddenly audiences saw a different side of her. As Laurie, his seemingly devoted wife with a hidden agenda, she went toe-to-toe with the biggest action star of the time. The film's massive success pushed her into the spotlight, but it was her next role that turned her into an icon. In Basic Instinct, 1992, Stone played Catherine Trammell, a seductive, possibly murderous novelist who knew exactly how to control every room she walked into. The film was provocative, controversial, and impossible to ignore. That interrogation scene. It became one of the most analyzed moments in movie history. Overnight, Stone became the go-to femme fatale, a role Hollywood would try to cast her in for years to come. But the industry can be fickle. By the late 90s, Stone's star power started to wane. Still, Stone never fully faded away. She transitioned to television, appearing in The Practice, winning an Emmy, and later Ratched, 2020. In 2021, she released her memoir, The Beauty of Living Twice, exposing Hollywood's darkest corners and her own personal battles. Now in her 60s, she works on her own terms, proving reinvention isn't just possible, it's inevitable. Heather Locklear. Heather Locklear didn't need Hollywood blockbusters to make a lasting impression. She built her empire on television, where she was practically untouchable in the 80s and 90s. Her career launched in 1981 when Dynasty cast her as Sammy Jo Carrington, a role that quickly made her a household name. The primetime soap opera was a ratings juggernaut, and even though Locklear wasn't the lead, she knew how to steal a scene. Producers took notice. Soon, she was juggling Dynasty and T.J. Hooker, 1982, a police drama where she played Officer Stacy Sheridan alongside William Shatner. By the early 90s, primetime soaps had lost their steam. But Aaron Spelling, the same producer who had given her Dynasty, was about to change her career again. In 1993, Melrose Place was struggling to find its footing in its first season. Spelling brought in Locklear as Amanda Woodward, a ruthless advertising executive with a sharp tongue and a take-no-prisoners attitude. The show exploded in popularity. Unlike many of her peers, she didn't vanish after the 90s. She smoothly transitioned into the 2000s with Spin City, 1999 to 2002, earning Golden Globe nominations for her role alongside Michael J. Fox and later Charlie Sheen. Guest spots on Scrubs 2.5 Men and Hot in Cleveland kept her name alive. But behind the scenes, things weren't so picture-perfect. In the late 2000s, she faced legal troubles and rehab stays that overshadowed her acting career. Hollywood didn't offer the same comeback opportunities as it did for some of her 80s and 90s peers. Today, she stays largely out of the spotlight, though she occasionally pops up in nostalgic TV projects. While she never made a grand return to Hollywood, her legacy as TV's ultimate blonde bombshell is locked in. Julia Roberts. Before Julia Roberts' breakthrough, she was just another young actress trying to find her place in the industry. Her first significant role came in Mystic Pizza, 1988, a small-budget film that introduced audiences to her undeniable charm, but it was Steel Magnolias, 1989, that gave her credibility. Playing Shelby, a young woman battling diabetes, she earned her first Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress. Then came Pretty Woman, 1990. Originally titled 3000 and meant to be a much darker drama, the film was reworked into a romantic fairy tale. That decision changed everything, not just for Julia, but for Hollywood. The film grossed nearly $463 million worldwide, making it one of the highest-grossing romantic comedies of all time. She dominated the decade with Sleeping with the Enemy, 1991, The Pelican Brief, 1993, and My Best Friend's Wedding, 1997, a film that redefined the romantic comedy genre. Notting Hill, 1999, paired her with Hugh Grant, and Runaway Bride, 1999, reunited her with Richard Gere, both films becoming major box office hits. At this point, she was commanding $20 million per film, an unheard-of number for an actress at the time. Then she did something unexpected. She stepped away from rom-coms. Erin Brockovich, 2000, proved she wasn't just playing lovable leads, she had range. The role won her an Oscar for Best Actress, and suddenly, she wasn't just America's sweetheart, she was Hollywood royalty. At 57, Julia isn't chasing trends, she's setting them. And after all these years, she's still one of Hollywood's biggest names. Winona Ryder. Winona Ryder had Hollywood in the palm of her hand. She wasn't just starring in films, she was defining a generation. Beetlejuice, 1988, made her the ultimate gothic dream girl, while Heathers, 1989, proved she could handle dark comedy like no one else. Then came Edward Scissorhands, 1990, where she played the all-American sweetheart opposite Johnny Depp, cementing her status as a pop culture icon. But Winona wasn't just a Tim Burton muse. By the mid-90s, she ruled indie cinema, taking on bold roles in Bram Stoker's Dracula, 1992, Reality Bites, 1994, and Little Women, 1994. Critics praised her versatility. One minute she was delivering cutting Gen X sarcasm, and the next she was earning Oscar nominations. By 1997, she was headlining big-budget films like Alien: Resurrection, proving she could do sci-fi just as effortlessly as drama. Then, in 2001, everything changed. A shoplifting arrest at Saks Fifth Avenue made headlines, and suddenly, Hollywood stopped calling. It wasn't just about the crime. It was the way the media turned her into a punchline overnight. A few roles trickled in over the years, Star Trek in 2009, Black Swan in 2010, but she was no longer the industry's darling. Then came Stranger Things, 2016, and everything shifted. As Joyce Byers, she brought raw emotion and intensity to the screen, reminding everyone why she was once one of the best actresses of her generation. The show's success didn't just revive her career, it introduced her to an entirely new audience. Now, Winona plays by her own rules. She's selective with roles, avoiding overexposure while keeping her status as a beloved Hollywood figure. Whether she's starring in a Netflix phenomenon or making a surprise cameo, one thing is clear: Winona Ryder was never meant to fade into the background. Monica Bellucci. While Hollywood was churning out blonde bombshells, Monica Bellucci was redefining beauty in Europe. She wasn't just another model-turned-actress, she was a force. Born in Italy, she started her career in fashion, working for brands like Dolce & Gabbana and Dior. Her striking features and effortless elegance made her a standout, but she wanted more than just the runway. Her transition to acting began in the early 90s with Italian films like La Rifa, 1991, and Ostinato Destino, 1992. French cinema quickly embraced her, and by 1996, she had her breakout role in L'Appartement, which earned her a César Award nomination. Unlike many models turned actresses, she proved she had real acting chops, not just a camera-ready face. By the late 90s, she was one of Europe's most recognizable actresses. Films like Milena, 2000, and Irreversible, 2002, cemented her reputation. Milena, in particular, showcased her ability to command a scene without speaking a word. The film's haunting portrayal of beauty and isolation turned her into a global icon. Hollywood finally took notice. In The Matrix Reloaded, 2003, and The Matrix Revolutions, 2003, she played Persephone, the seductive yet enigmatic program who added depth to the franchise's mythology. The role introduced her to a new audience, proving she could hold her own in a sci-fi blockbuster. In 2015, she made history as the oldest Bond woman inspector cast at 50. While Hollywood had a habit of discarding women past a certain age, Monica thrived, proving that beauty and talent don't have an expiration date. In 2024, she's still working. Recent projects include The Girl in the Fountain, 2021, where she plays Anita Ekberg, another European beauty who captivated Hollywood. Whether in indie films, art house dramas, or major franchises, Monica continues to defy expectations, proving that true star power never fades.